On a sparkling night in New York City's Upper East Side, the Harrington Mansion stood like a glowing jewel. The sprawling estate, with its marble steps and grand windows, was ablaze with golden light. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway, chauffeurs opening doors for men in tuxedos and women in glittering gowns. It was the night of the annual Harrington Charity Gala, the most anticipated event of the season. Inside, the ballroom shimmered with extravagance. Crystal chandeliers scattered light like fire across the polished floors. Waiters in white gloves carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, weaving among the guests. At the center of it all, a grand piano gleamed under the lights, its presence a symbol of both culture and wealth. And reigning over this world was Victoria Harrington. Tall, poised, and dressed in a sapphire silk gown that clung to her figure, she commanded every gaze. Her diamond necklace sparkled beneath the chandeliers. Her perfectly styled blonde hair framed a face made for magazine covers. Victoria was admired, envied, and feared. Her words carried weight, not for their kindness, but for the sharpness of her wit. She thrived on control, and nothing pleased her more than making others feel small in her shadow. But fate, that night, had other plans. From the service corridors, a small figure crept closer to the ballroom. It was Emily, just 9 years old. She wore a faded dress, patched at the hem, and scuffed shoes too large for her feet. Her hands still clutched a rag from the kitchen, where she had been helping her mother, Linda, polish silver trays. But the sound of music and laughter had drawn her like a moth to light. Emily stood frozen near one of the marble columns, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. The swirling gowns, the dazzling chandeliers, and above all, the grand piano that seemed to breathe under the spotlight. At first, no one noticed her. She was small enough to disappear into the shadows, but Victoria's sharp eyes caught everything. When she spotted Emily, a cruel smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Raising her glass, she called out in a voice that cut through the chatter, Well, what do we have here?" The room fell silent. Heads turned, and suddenly all eyes were on the little girl standing timidly at the edge of the ballroom. Emily's cheeks burned as she gripped the rag tighter. Victoria glided forward, her heels clicking across the marble. "Look at this," she said with a mocking laugh. "Did the staff bring their children tonight?" A ripple of polite laughter spread through the room. Some covered their mouths, others whispered behind fans. Emily lowered her gaze and stammered, "I'm sorry. I was just looking." Victoria's laughter was sharp as glass. "Looking? Darling, people don't look at a gala. They serve or they stay hidden." Emily wished the floor would swallow her, but Victoria wasn't done. She trailed her manicured fingers across the gleaming piano. "Tell me, little one," she said sweetly, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Have you ever seen anything so fine? This piano costs more than most homes in this city." Emily's eyes lingered on the keys, and her silence betrayed her fascination. Victoria caught it instantly. Her smile widened with wicked delight. She turned to the crowd and declared, "Shall we make this interesting? If this girl can truly play this piano, I'll adopt her myself." Gasps and laughter erupted. Some clapped in amusement, others leaned closer, eager for entertainment. Emily's heart pounded. Adopted? She already had a mother, one who worked day and night to keep them fed. But the smugness in Victoria's tone, the certainty that she would fail, lit a spark inside her. She remembered her father, now gone, sitting beside her with an old, broken keyboard. His hands guided hers gently as he whispered, "Music isn't just notes, Emily. It's the voice of your soul." Those words gave her courage. With trembling hands, she placed the rag aside, stepped toward the piano, and climbed onto the velvet bench. The room fell into a tense silence. Guests leaned in, ready for the inevitable humiliation. But Emily wasn't looking at them. Her eyes were locked on the piano. Somewhere deep inside, courage whispered louder than fear. She raised her small fingers above the keys, ready to defy every expectation in the grandest ballroom of New York. The ballroom held its breath as Emily's fingers hovered above the keys. Her legs dangled from the velvet bench, and her small shoulders shook with fear. Across the room, Victoria Harrington folded her arms, her smirk brimming with confidence. The guests exchanged amused glances, already anticipating the child's humiliation. Then, Emily pressed a single key. A soft, delicate note rang out. A few people chuckled, but then another note followed, and another, until a fragile melody began to form. At first, it trembled like a whisper, but slowly it grew stronger, steadier, carried by something far deeper than skill: truth. The laughter faded, glasses lowered. Even the waiters slowed their steps. The sound was not polished like that of a professional pianist, but it carried something rare, something raw. It was music woven from memories of a father who once guided her hands on a broken keyboard, from nights when her mother worked herself to exhaustion, from dreams Emily had never dared to share aloud. Her small back straightened as her confidence grew. The melody rose, flowing with quiet strength, pulling the listeners into her world. One woman dabbed her eyes with a napkin. A man cleared his throat to disguise emotion. The chandeliers seemed to glow brighter as the music filled every corner. Even Victoria's smirk faltered. Her green eyes narrowed, not with mockery now, but with disbelief. She had expected failure, a spectacle of ridicule. Instead, this ragged little girl was captivating the wealthiest room in New York City. Emily remembered her father's words. "Don't be afraid of silence. Music lives there too." That's when people lean closer. She let the notes pause just for a moment. And it worked. The audience leaned forward, their hearts suspended in anticipation. Then her fingers danced again, and the melody surged with new life. By the time the final chord echoed, the room was spellbound. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, from the back, a single clap broke the silence. Another followed, and suddenly, the entire ballroom erupted in thunderous applause. Emily's chest heaved. She stared at the piano, afraid to look up. But when she finally did, she saw faces she had never seen before. Faces looking at her not with pity, but with admiration. "Emily!" a voice cried sharply. The girl froze. At the edge of the ballroom stood Linda, her mother, still in her maid's uniform, her apron dusted with flour. Her face was pale with fear. She rushed across the marble floor and threw her arms around her daughter. "I told you to stay in the service quarters," she whispered urgently, her voice breaking. "This is not our place." The applause faltered, replaced by an uneasy hush. Guests turned to watch as mother and daughter clung to each other. Victoria stepped forward, her heels echoing against the marble. Her smile had returned, though colder now. "So, the mystery is solved," she said loudly, ensuring the whole room could hear. "The maid's daughter. How quaint." Linda lowered her gaze, ashamed. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Harrington," she pleaded. "She begged to help tonight, and I thought she would stay with me in the kitchen. She must have wandered off. Please forgive her." The guests exchanged uneasy glances. The mood was no longer one of amusement. What had started as entertainment now felt cruel. And then, from the crowd, a voice spoke firmly. That wasn't just chance. Heads turned toward the speaker, Mr. Robert Whitman, one of the city's most respected philanthropists and a patron of the arts. He stepped forward, his gray hair gleaming beneath the chandelier. "This child didn't stumble through those notes," he said. "She played with skill and heart, better than many trained musicians I've heard." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. A music professor added softly, "It takes years to play with such emotion. That was no accident." Tears shimmered in Linda's eyes. Slowly, she lifted her chin and spoke, though her voice was quiet. "Her father. He was a teacher. He taught music before he passed away. Every night he taught Emily until illness took him. Since then, I've done all I can. cleaning houses, scrubbing floors, just to keep us alive. But she carries his gift. The room grew still. Some guests looked down, ashamed. Others stared at Emily with new awe. But Victoria wasn't ready to surrender. She forced a laugh, though it rang hollow. "A touching story, truly," she said. "But let's not get carried away. She's a sweet little girl with talent, yes. But talent doesn't erase the facts. She doesn't belong in this world. Conservatories, fine instruments, opportunity, those are not for children like her." Her words sparked discomfort. This time, no one laughed. Instead, whispers of disapproval spread through the ballroom. For the first time, the tide of opinion was turning against Victoria Harrington. Mr. Whitman's voice cut through once more. "With respect, Mrs. Harrington, perhaps the question isn't whether Emily belongs here, but whether we've been blind to the beauty hidden in places we dismiss." Applause broke out again, hesitant at first, then stronger. Linda clutched her daughter, whispering, "You did nothing wrong, my darling. Nothing at all." And for the first time that night, Emily believed her. But as the applause faded, a shadow returned. Hanging over the ballroom like an unfinished chord was Victoria's own promise. "If she can play, I'll adopt her myself." The crowd had not forgotten. A restless murmur swept across the ballroom. Then, from somewhere near the back, a guest spoke loudly enough for all to hear. "Mrs. Harrington, you said it yourself. If she could play, you'd adopt her." The reminder dropped like a stone in water. Dozens of eyes turned to Victoria. Her smile stiffened, the stem of her champagne glass trembling in her grip. What she had tossed off as a cruel joke now bound her in front of everyone. "Well," she said finally, her voice smooth but strained, "I am a woman of my word. If I promise to adopt her, then so it shall be." Gasps echoed through the room. Linda staggered as though struck, clutching Emily tightly. "No," she cried. "Please, no. She's my daughter, my everything. You can't take her from me." Emily buried her face against her mother's apron, tears brimming in her eyes. She didn't understand all of it, but she knew what mattered. She belonged in her mother's arms, not in the cold glitter of this ballroom. Uneasy murmurs filled the air. A woman in pearls whispered, "Surely she can't mean it, to separate a child from her mother. That would be heartless." A gentleman nearby added, "This isn't generosity. It's cruelty dressed as charity." But Victoria stood tall, her sapphire gown shimmering under the chandeliers. "Cruelty?" she countered, her tone cutting. "I offer this girl a life of luxury, an education, every opportunity her mother could never provide. Isn't that what every parent dreams of for their child?" Instead of applause, silence followed. The admiration that usually cloaked Victoria seemed to be slipping away. Guests shifted uncomfortably, no longer certain they stood behind her. Linda lifted her tear-streaked face, her voice breaking yet fierce. "I may be poor. I may have nothing in your eyes, but I give her something you never can, my love. And that is worth more than all your diamonds." The words struck deeper than Linda knew. For a moment, Victoria faltered. Behind her flawless smile, something twisted, an ache she never admitted. She had no children of her own, though rumors swirled in society about why. Some said she was too vain, too devoted to appearances. Others guessed heartbreak hid beneath her perfect exterior. Whatever the reason, love like Linda's was foreign to her. Still, pride steeled her spine. "I will not break my promise," she declared. "Emily will be mine." Linda dropped to her knees, clutching her daughter as though shielding her from a storm. "Please," she begged. "Taking her from me is like tearing out my heart. She is my life." Emily sobbed quietly in her arms, trembling, her small frame shuddering with fear. Around them, guests watched, horrified. What had begun as entertainment now felt grotesque. From the crowd came voices of protest. "You can't treat a child like a wager," one man cried. "She's not a prize to be won," another woman shouted. The ballroom was no longer a place of admiration, but a court of judgment. Victoria stood at its center, her once unshakable authority slipping away. Then, with measured steps, Robert Whitman came forward. His voice, calm yet firm, filled the hall. "Mrs. Harrington, your words have power, yes. But true power lies not in clinging to a cruel boast, but in choosing compassion. We all witnessed something extraordinary tonight. A child with rare talent, playing not from privilege, but from the depths of her soul. Do you really wish to be remembered as the woman who tried to tear her from her mother for the sake of pride?" The question hung heavy in the air. Victoria's lips parted, but no reply came. For the first time in years, she had no clever retort, no rehearsed remark to reassert her dominance. Emily lifted her tearful eyes, gazing at Victoria. There was no hatred in her expression, only sadness, and that innocence pierced the room more deeply than anger ever could. From the far side, an elderly guest stood and declared, "Enough. This has gone far enough." A wave of agreement rippled through the crowd. Murmurs turned into voices, voices into demands. The chandeliers sparkled above, casting sharp light on a woman whose glittering image was cracking. Linda, still on her knees, lifted her chin and spoke with trembling but steady conviction. "You have jewels, you have mansions, but you will never give my daughter what I can. She is mine, and no promise made in arrogance can change that." The ballroom felt like a drum, taut and ready to snap. Never before had Victoria Harrington faced such resistance, such open condemnation. Her perfect facade wavered. The once admiring eyes of New York's elite now bore into her with judgment. And for the first time in memory, Victoria realized she was no longer in control. The silence inside the Harrington ballroom was suffocating. For years, Victoria had ruled these gatherings like a queen. Every word met with laughter, every gesture mirrored with admiration. But tonight, the tide had turned. What was once applause had become judgment, and what was once power now felt like a cage. Emily clung to her mother, her small frame trembling, her cheeks streaked with tears. Linda held her tightly, her back straight despite her fear, ready to face down the wealthiest woman in New York if it meant protecting her child. Robert Whitman's voice rose again, calm yet commanding. "Mrs. Harrington, a promise may bind you, but what binds a heart is humanity. This girl doesn't need to be stripped from her mother to fulfill your word. She needs opportunity, not cruelty." Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Guests began to clap softly, and the fragile rhythm gave Victoria pause. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of their eyes not as admiration, but as condemnation. Her gaze drifted back to Emily. The memory of those trembling hands on the keys, weaving a melody that silenced even the most cynical hearts, returned to her. Something stirred inside, something she thought long buried. Not pity, not envy, but humility. Her voice, when it came, was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "Perhaps I was wrong." The room froze. Whispers erupted, spreading like wildfire. Victoria lifted her chin, her words steadier now. "I will not tear this child from her mother. But what she gave us tonight, what she gave me, cannot be ignored. Emily has a gift, and gifts like hers deserve to be nurtured." The ballroom grew quiet again, this time with anticipation. Victoria stepped toward the piano, resting her manicured hand on its polished surface. "I will make good on my promise, but not through adoption. From this night forward, I will sponsor Emily's education at the finest music academy in the country. She will have instruments, teachers, and every opportunity she deserves. Her talent will not fade in the shadows of a kitchen." Linda covered her mouth with both hands, tears spilling down her face. I don't know what to say." "You say yes," Victoria replied simply. Emily turned to her mother, her eyes wide and shining. "Does this mean I can really play? Not just here, not just at home, but for everyone? Linda's tears streamed faster, but she nodded, cupping her daughter's cheek. Yes, my darling. It means your music will fly further than we ever dreamed. The applause that followed was thunderous, but it carried a different tone now. It was not shallow admiration for wealth or beauty. It was respect for a moment of grace, for a child's courage, for a mother's love. For the first time, Victoria was not applauded as a figure above them all, but as a woman who had stumbled, faltered, and found something real. Later that night, after the last guests departed and the chandeliers dimmed, Emily slipped quietly back to the piano. She placed her fingers on the keys and played a gentle tune, a lullaby just for her mother. Linda listened with closed eyes, her hands clasped over her heart. In the shadows near the doorway, Victoria watched silently. Her arms were folded, but there was no arrogance in her stance. For once, her expression held respect, and perhaps even longing. The mansion no longer glittered with shallow opulence. In that moment, it felt transformed, alive not because of wealth, but because of a little girl's music. Emily was no longer invisible. She was no longer just the maid's daughter. She was a voice the world had to hear. And this story, whispered long after the gala ended, carried a lesson too precious to forget. That love cannot be bought, that talent knows no boundaries, and that even the coldest heart can be softened by the truth of a child's song. So if this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow our channel for more stories that inspire and remind us of what truly matters.